What if I told you that the most important science class a child ever takes happens way before they ever crack open a textbook? In fact, it's probably happening right now, with like a pile of blocks and a little bit of imagination. See, the most powerful science learning doesn't look like a formal lesson at all. It looks a lot more like play. Okay, let's dive into this.
So picture this scene. You've got two second graders, they're on the floor, and they are completely zoned in on building this massive tower out of blocks. They're laughing, working together, stacking them higher and higher. Now, you might just see a fun little activity, right? But you gotta look closer. What's actually happening inside that tower? Well, it's a total masterclass in engineering. And these kids, they're the architects. Because secretly, inside that tower, they've built this whole series of zigzagging ramps spaced out just right to guide a marble from the very top all the way down to the bottom. They even built smaller versions first, little prototypes, just to get the angles perfect. This was not just play. This was the engineering design process, live and in action, and it was driven entirely by their own curiosity.
And that block tower, it's the perfect example of a powerful truth that we as adults often miss. Young children are natural-born scientists and engineers. There's this stubborn myth that real STEM learning only starts later, in middle school or high school. And it is time to bust that myth wide open.
This idea is everywhere. The belief that the early years are just for the basics, letters, numbers, that kind of thing, and the real science will come much, much later. But honestly, a mountain of new research shows that could not be further from the truth. It's not even close. So let's just flip the script on this. The old myth basically sees childhood as a passive waiting room for learning. But the reality, the one that's backed by a ton of research, is that children are active, capable scientists from day one. They are not just getting ready to do science, they are doing it right now, every single day. So what do we actually mean when we say born scientists? Well, it's all about their natural process. From the moment they're born, kids are systematically exploring and testing out ideas. Get this. There was a study where an 11-month-old saw a toy car that looked like it was floating off of a table. And what did they do? They stared at it way longer than normal, and then they immediately started testing the object's properties. They were literally running experiments to figure out why the world wasn't working the way they expected it to. And look, this isn't just some new age theory. This view is fully endorsed by major players like the National Science Teachers Association and the National Association for the Education of Young Children. They all agree that kids have the brain power for complex reasoning right from the get-go. So if children are already these capable scientists, what does that mean for us, the adults in their lives? It means our role has to change. We need to shift. Instead of being the expert with all the answers, we need to become more of a curious guide who explores right alongside them. It's way less about just delivering information and a lot more about fueling their natural process of discovery. Here's a perfect little story. It's a rainy day, and a young girl named Talia is listening to a downspout. She hears that rushing water, and she turns to her teacher and asks, "I wonder what that's for." Now, the teacher's first instinct, just explain it, right? But he stopped himself. He held back. And what happened next was amazing. Talia and her friends started investigating. One kid pointed up to the roof, another looked down at the drain. And together, just by watching and talking, they figured out the entire system. They even came up with a hypothesis that the water eventually went to the ocean. And this was the teacher's big aha moment. He realized that if he had just given them the answer, he would have sent a really clear message. My knowledge is more valuable than your own discovery process. By stepping back, he empowered them. He let them be the scientists. So how can we all get better at being these guides? Well, the good news is you don't need a PhD or some fancy lab. It's really just about adopting a few simple mindsets and practices. Let's build your science toolkit right now. Okay, here are 5 super powerful tools. First, model your own curiosity. Just say, I wonder, out loud. Ask those great open-ended questions like, what do you think would happen if? Encourage them to really look closely at things and actually listen to their theories, even the really wild ones. And of course, the big one we just talked about, resist that powerful urge to just jump in with the answer. And please, forget about those expensive science kits. The best tools are probably already in your house or classroom. Blocks, water, and Play-Doh, those aren't just toys. They're laboratories for exploring physics. Ramps and marbles are perfect for figuring out forces and motion. Seriously, a trip to the kitchen or just the backyard can spark some absolutely incredible discoveries.
Even screen time can be a powerful tool if you use it right. A really high quality show, like this one from PBS Kids, can act as a catalyst. A kid sees a character on screen solving a problem and thinks, hey, I can do that, and boom, suddenly they're off, launching their very own hands on investigation.
So, when you put this all together, it leads to a complete shift in how we see early science. It's not about trying to cram another subject into an already packed day. It's about finally recognizing that science is already happening everywhere, all the time.
Their real goal here isn't to create some rigid curriculum of experiments. No, it's to foster a mindset of exploration in the child and, frankly, in yourself, too. It's all about celebrating their natural, curiosity-driven way of engaging with the world. And when we do that, we're not just teaching science, we're nurturing the scientist that is already there. And that brings us to a final thought, maybe a little challenge for you. The next time a child looks up and says, I wonder, what are you going to do? Will you give them the answer, or will you give them an invitation to explore? That one simple choice, well, it can change everything.